Good evening. Can you please make your way to your seats, please?
Oh, phew, it's not my coat.
Thank you.
I got an email from Ron
Oh, yeah.
saying
You're doing two better ones. Good evening. Welcome to CPS. Have we got any new people here in the house tonight? Hi. Welcome. Hopefully you enjoy the show. Just ask people around you. They'll know what's going on and can help you out. Just a little bit of housekeeping first, please. And that is, there's the emergency exits, one here and one through there, out the back as well. The assembly point is across the road. The bathrooms are over in that corner of the building. If you don't know, please ask someone. I'm sure they'll help you. And another small important thing is any ring-a-dings, please make them ring-a-dings. Rather silent. It'd be nice, thank you. And I think that's all for the moment on that side of things. My name's Karen, and I'm your MC for this evening, in case you've forgotten who I am. Or have you never met me, so sweet. I don't know about you, but I have had an exciting couple of days. I think it's a little bit of a photographer's dream in the last few days. We've had an amazing aurora, and we've had Anzac Day, which always brings out parades and lovely photographic opportunities, as well as our wonderful autumn leaves that are around. So hopefully everyone's getting out there when they can and having fun. Now this evening we have the projected image number 3, which is portraiture. And our lovely Ian is the judge and is going to give us the critiques and helpful insights this evening, which is great to have him here live, so you can always hit him up afterwards to explain himself some further. Thanks, Ian. We do have a couple of notices. You would have noticed that when you came in the entrance, there is your membership cards to pick up. Hopefully you've picked yours up. If you haven't, please do so on your exit. And there's a couple of envelopes there with particular people's names on it. If they could pick those up if they happen to be here as well, would be fantastic. Now, Diane has a notice as well.
On my phone. Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Just to remind anyone that was interested, I sent an email out, 2 emails regarding the introduction to studio lighting at the 921 studios in Wigram. The tickets are actually, you have to buy your own tickets through the link, so hopefully everybody got that link. I did send it to every member so that those 15 or so, 20 people that were interested were able to purchase if the night suited them. If not, come and see me after. It's on Tuesday, the 9th of May, 7:30 to 9:30, at the studios, excuse me, in Wigram, and parking will be out on the street, not on site. But it's pretty well lit round there, and hopefully we'll have a good night. The plan, I think, is to show us how to work with one light, 2 lights, 3 lights, so on, and some movement. So it should be quite an interesting evening for us. I'm not sure whether we'll fit in any photography afterwards, because this is like a special condensed version for us, so we can keep the price down. There will be tickets being sold to the public as well, so if you're interested, please get in there as quick as you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, has anyone else got any notices they would like to bring up? No? Yes? Okay. Awesome. Well, are you introducing? Okay. So John is going to have the pleasure. Pardon? Oh, have we got the MDC first too? Okay, so we'll do MDC first, and then John will introduce our lovely Ian. Would you like me to call up Mr. John Beam for you?
John Ben is here.
Ben? I believe he is indeed.
We could knock the chocolate fish at the retail thing to put them the twin pack just to...
It's getting fancier. Travel.
So the theme for next month is travel.
Thank you.
Shadows, the theme for this month include from Sunday night.
Okay, shadow this month, travel next month. Oh, I could actually do something with that. Okay, and now I'm going to hand it to John.
That's all right. Good evening. I'm John Hunt. I'm the secretary for the PI competitions this year, and it's my pleasure tonight to introduce the judge for the PI3 portrait. It's Ian Walls. Now, everyone here knows Ian. He's the president of the club, and he's also on the honours board of PSNZ. Last week he gave us a summary of the benefits to photographers of entering competitions, how competitions are judged, and how not to use the term nice when describing your reactions to photos. Ian was first drawn towards photography as a high school student. His level of interest was dramatically invigorated by the advent of digital age of photography. Ian's view of photography is to cut through, as he says, the arty gobbledygook and get down to the essence of what an image really means. He emphasises that good photos are about communication, and that to appeal to others, it needs to be something that the audience enjoys and wants to engage with, even if the subject is confronting. They say a photograph tells us as much about a photographer as the subject. Ian often says and uses the quote, "The camera always points both ways." In expressing your subject, you're also expressing yourself, a quote from Freeman Patterson. Also, all photographs are self-portraits. So it's fitting that he's here tonight to present his critique of PI3 portrait competition. There were 38 images entered, 12 accepted, 4 high acceptances, 2 honours and 1 best in show, a total of 19 out of 38. I'd like to introduce Ian Walls.
Thanks, John. Firstly, apologies to everybody for me being here again after last week. I think there might be a few C graders a bit sick of me by now, but that's the way it goes. Usually at CPS we aim for an eminent portrait photographer to do this, but that didn't work out, so you're getting me instead. So I thought I'd better first of all start by trying to figure out what portrait photography actually is all about. So what I did was I consulted Mr. Google, and Mr. Google said portrait photography aims to capture the identity, personality and essence of a subject using photographic techniques such as lighting, posing and composition. So that's what we're after. But in the interest of fairness, I thought I'd better ask ChatGPT as well. So I did. And this is what ChatGPT had to say. Portrait photography is a genre that focuses on capturing the likeness, personality and expression of an individual or a group of subjects. The aim is to tell a story or convey emotions through the subject's image, showcasing their unique characteristics and mood and style. So they both seem to agree that it's not simply a technique-based thing, but it's actually about getting some stuff across that talks about the essence of the person. I also want to relate a story about one of my earliest experiences of looking at a portrait photography competition. It was when I first joined CPS, not long after I joined, which my new thing tells me it was in 2006. The judge at that time was a bloke by the name of Dick Poole, who many of you will recognise that name, he walked in here with a degree of mana and reverence that I haven't probably seen before. He really held the group incredibly well, and talked quite a lot about some technical things about lighting and stuff. He was after all a portrait photographer. But in essence, he said, none of that really matters. It's all about ESP. And we went, what's ESP, Dick? And he said that expression sells photographs. So that was Dick's key to professional portrait photography, was all about the expression. And he made the point that photographers have a more difficult task than painters when it comes to expression. A painter can recognise an expression which sums up a person and bring it back again, where a portrait photographer has to generate it. So that's one of the keys that I'm looking for tonight, is have you been able to generate an expression that really relates to the person. I'm hoping the images are in the right order this time, and I'm going to try really hard not to say nice at all. So let's get the show on the road with image number 1. It's called Matching Car, and the title tells me a little bit, tells me that you've recognised that this bloke with his red shirt and his red car kind of go together. So that is the comparison that you're trying to achieve. I like the rim light effect around his head. That gives a nice little glow, and you've got a good amount of fill. But I'm not engaged with him at all. He's talking to somebody else somewhere else in the whole thing. I really don't see, without your title, the relationship between him and the car, and consequently it just feels like you've missed a chance. If he'd glanced back towards us, I think that would have made all the difference. It's also a little softer than I would like to see. So this was a not acceptance. Treat time. This is a cute little dog, and in fact this dog very much reminds me of our little dog who passed away a couple of months ago, so I looked at it and went, wow, there's Cougar. You've got a really clear picture of his eyes with a dog like this. That's actually quite hard to do. He has hair all over the place. But what's happened here, if you look at that image, you can see quite clearly that the camera has focused on the background. It's on the rock. The rock is crisp, is really sharp, and the dog is forward of the rock and consequently is not sharp. You've over-sharpened it to try and compensate for that, but unfortunately you just need to choose another image, the one where the camera is focused on the dog, and you need to learn to make the camera focus where you want it to. Hot and happy companion. What did I say here? The focus is really good. He does have a smile, so there's a happiness about him, and the backlit position kind of works. There's mottled light over his face, though, and so there's areas of dark and there's areas of light. And the thing that for me makes it more difficult is the fact you've chopped his legs off right at a joint halfway down the front, so be aware of where those other things are when you're concentrating on that. The other aspect is that the point of view looking down on that dog is literally that. It's taken from sort of standing up camera height. My suggestion to get the dog to engage with you more is to get down to the same level as the dog, be aware of everything in your frame and compose it to make that work better. Again, are not accepted. Sophie, you can see the lighting set up here. If you look at her eyes, this is where the lighting set up it sort of tells us, and you can see two sets of light. There's light on either side and another little bit of light working on the background, so that works really well. The background is out of focus. The image, though, feels just a little soft. I don't know whether that's an intentional process, effort to make the whole thing a little bit soft, but the eyes need to be crisp. The eyes really hold the essence of the person, and I would like to see them crisper. The balance of the pose is all the way to the left-hand side of the frame, and I wonder if you could consider next time allowing a little more space and just, so you can see the other side of her hair. It's not hard up against the side. Joe and Ute. Black and white and the sepia works in this situation, and the depth of field is really good. We've got a narrow depth of field. We can see the man's face and we can see the dog's face are in focus, and the background is out of focus. Where my eye is pulled, though, is to the brightest part of the image, which is Joe's shirt. By a long shot, that the contrast is down in his shirt, and in fact the relationship that I think you're trying to express is the look between the eyes of Joe and Ute the dog, and that's very much a secondary part of this picture, the way I see it, and the way my eyes are involuntarily pulled away from that area. So think about where the brightest things are, and in post-processing you can darken down things that are bright and lighten up things that want to draw your attention. You need to just take that another step further to really pull us to that relationship between their eyes. Sooty likes leaves. This one's got the focus bang on, that eye's penetrating. Everybody sitting there can just almost feel the cat jumping out of the tree looking at us. So you've got that focus part of it absolutely bang on. It's a relatively thin depth of field, so his ears are just in focus and further back is not, and further forward is. The issue I have is the leaves, the difficulty. I don't mind the leaves on camera right, because they explain the shadow on the side of Sooty's face, but those red and green, really colourful, really intrusive leaves for me spoil what otherwise was a really compelling picture, and they're really accurately achieved with those bright eyes. This might be one of those opportunities to have a go with the brand new Photoshop remove tool. If anybody's seen this clever AI that'll remove things, I think you could actually have a crack at removing the pink and green, and that would take this image up a level. Emma. This, for me, is a great story about Emma and her horse and the relationship between the two. I enjoy the little details, for example, like the fact that Emma's necklace has a stirrup on it, so she's pretty much clearly a horsey person. The image is titled Emma. I think it would be more successful if it was more about Emma. So my suggestion would be to crop in from the right, and just so you just left the nose of the horse, crop into her hand, and you almost take the eyes of the horse out, so that the horse would become less of a part of it and more of a sort of an accessory in this picture. Either that, or come around to the right a little bit and be shooting past the horse at Emma, so that the picture becomes more strongly about her. The focus is good. The design is I really like the sort of triangular form between the dancer's face, down her arm to her hands, and there's a big triangle in the middle of that holds the whole thing together. The colours are wonderful, and the out of focus background works really well. For me, this feels more about the dance, though, than the dancer. It's more of an action photograph than a portrait of this particular dancer. I feel that more focus on the dancer's face, or a more unique pose, a unique pose or moment, would have elevated this from what for me is an action shot of the dance to a portrait shot of the dancer. Katrina, this is a score 2. You filled the frame with a well with a simple out of focus background, and there's a casual feel to this that works really well. It is in focus, her hair's in focus, the front of her nose is in focus, but there must have been some movement in her eyes. I've looked at this about half a dozen times to try and figure out what's happening. There feels to be something not crisp in her eyes, and I suspect she's just moved it completely the wrong time. and that's created a sort of out of balance situation from something which was potentially really good. A young model in a leather jacket. This is a lovely background, beautifully lit, great model, and everything's really good in the setup. But I get the sense here that she's actually engaging with another photographer or somebody else. She's completely looking out of this frame, and I almost feel like an intruder in this image. If you had asked her to maintain exactly the same pose, say not move a muscle on where she's looking, but just to bring her eyes towards you as the photographer, that would have been perfect. That would have allowed us to be part of the interaction between you and her, as opposed to an onlooker to observe another action. Until there's that sort of contact and relationship between us as the viewer, the image just is less effective for me as a portrait. Patiently waiting. It's a cute dog, and it's a great place. The beach is a really good active place that you've gone to go and see the dog where they're happy and they're playing and they should be looking good. But I come back to this looking out of frame thing again and go, kind of, what's he looking at? And then there's this bright red lead which goes where? So there's a story there, but I'm not seeing it. And there's a relationship with the dog there that I think really could be brought forward. From a technical point of view, once again, the camera has grabbed focus on the back end of the dog. You can see it in the plane of focus on the sand and just all the way through his fur. His rump's sharp, his head's not. Again, control of what your camera is focusing on is paramount in situations such as this. So well done for getting out there and into the good place, and then just take it up a step by fully being aware of everything in your frame and then concentrating on where the camera is focusing. Friends, there's actually quite a few people in here from CPS, so this is a good self-portrait session, and this kind of feels that. This is a great shot. It's a special interaction, and they clearly are friends. This, for me, is a super shot that will fit anywhere on Facebook, and in fact almost should be on the CPS Facebook page. That's exactly what it's for and what it's about. But for me, as a competition image, it's got an essence, but that's all it's got. It doesn't have a larger story. I believe if you had given us some context, step back a little bit, tell us a little about where they are, tell us a little bit about what they're doing to make it enjoyable. We've got just a headshot here that is compelling, but it's only kind of half the story. The other thing here is it appears to me that you have used an on-camera flash technique, so everything is filled. There's no shaping of the light, there's no form, there's no shadow, there's nothing defining anything. It's all bang on and really loud. That's created a simple black background because there's no light on it. But as I say, once again, this is an image that would be absolutely fantastic for a Facebook type place, but it's less successful within the bounds of a competition. Off to the races. The hat tells the story really well, and it's a big part of this image and works. I like the fact that you've focused. You've got the focus right on her eyes. She's got a great smile, and the really simple background with just subtle blues and oranges works in there. The downside of that orange hat is the fact that everything underneath it is does feel orange. The top half of her face has got a distinct orange kind of a feel to it, and a really good example of that, if you look in closely at the lipstick on her top lip, which is being affected by the orange, and the lipstick on her bottom lip, which is being affected by the sunlit, they look like they're completely different colours. So that's created an out of balance thing, which I found a bit disconcerting from something which is otherwise a really good shot. Pearl in pink. enjoyed the concept of the mirror background, kind of bouncing things. What are we looking at? Two sides of pearl are being shown here. Perhaps it might have been a bit simpler if you'd managed to just have a simpler background than those doors over the other side, but the concepts kind of worked reasonably well. This is a good example of a short lighting technique. So you've got a situation where you've got the main key light closer to the subject than to the camera, so that this side of her face, the side closer to the camera, is where the shadows are. Normally, more often than not, we'll be using broad lighting, which is the other way around, where the clear bit is closer to the camera and the shadows are on the back. So this works well, and what it does is it pulls me through the image. Looking at her face, I'm drawn past the shadowy part to her eye at the background, which worked really well. Where it tumbles down for me is, and I'm not sure whether you've done this in post-processing or some sort of softness filter on the outside of the lens, but we've got this softness introduced from the left-hand side of the frame, which comes across and makes interferes with her hand, so her hand's soft and the background is not. So whether you've got a gradient or something and you've blurred out the other side of the gradient, but we've got this sort of demarcation line that just doesn't sit naturally. What you could have done if you'd wanted to make that soft effect, and I think that would have been really effective in this image, is to soften the whole thing a little bit and make it softer on the outside. If the softness was continuous, particularly if you'd been able to separate her out and soften the slightly confronting door and things that are in the window reflection, to just make that part of the story but back it off a little bit. But what you've done here creates that odd situation where things that should be in focus, particularly the whole sort of left quarter of the frame, should be in focus, and when you look at what is in focus and it isn't, and it felt a little out of kilter for me and unfortunate. Enjoying the feel of the surf. This is a fun action shot, but for me it feels more about what the boy is doing than who he is. Remember, a portrait photography is we're trying to get across the essence of somebody. Yes, he's interaction, but that's really what you're telling me about him here. You've used a relatively slow shutter speed, which has achieved that good blur in the wave movement, and that ties in well with the action side of things. But then, in order to get some sharpness back, you've over-sharpened his face, so we've got some kind of unnatural-looking lines, particularly as eyelids look just really super crisp and overdone. So it's the sense I get is that face has been over-sharpened to bring it back into it, where perhaps if you wanted something sharp, you should have upped that shutter speed to 1,000th of a second or so, and then you would have got a different result and a different feel that it would have been better on the face, I believe. Fire breather. Similar sort of concept here, lots of energy in the fire action, but 3/4 of the picture is about the action. This is an action shot rather than a portrait of a fire breather or fire artist or whatever you call them. I think a better who he is image could have been made in about 5 seconds when he's put the fire out and he's turned around and looked at you, and you can still see some of the liquid sort of splattered all over the place, and there's an essence and an energy still there, but it's actually about him and about what's he doing versus this explosive burst of fire, which is what this image is about. I think the image is put together well as a really strong diagonal which comes down to him. But for me, this is not a portrait image, it's an action image. The white heron, there's beautiful focus and exposure. The background is just subtle. Everything looks really good about this bird, except why did you chop his feet off, is all I'm saying. I feel like I've half got a picture. If it's going to be a chopped off bit, then make it just a headshot. This is an unnatural chop off position that I see here, so I would have loved you to present me this again with the feet and the bit of a perch, and it would have been perfect. Either that or go all the way up and just show me the top half. So lots and lots of really good things about this, but it just left me feeling sort of somewhere in between. Florist at work. It's a good moment and a good focus on the flowers. This is another kind of short lighting situation where the window light is lighting predominantly on the sort of far away side of his face, and the shadows are on the close side of the face, so that draws us into the picture, and that works really well. I do have an issue, it's a bit hard to see from that far away, but if you can see where somebody's done some Photoshop work, then they need to do better Photoshop work. When you get home for this picture, go and have a look at it reasonably closely, and you'll find something around the top of that nice smooth hairless line on the top of his head should be smooth, but it's got little funny cutouts along it where the selection software has not quite got it all. Equally on the back of his collar, there's another selected area that goes in the back up the collar just underneath his ear where there's a spludgy blur followed over. So it appears to me that you have darkened and softened the background, which is a great thing, but it needs to be invisible. And it just needs, there's just some Photoshop techniques that you need to get in closer and be more picky with what you do. Photoshop should be invisible, and potentially could be, and let's just let it down just a little bit from what otherwise was a good image. Caroline, another CPS moment, and it's a great relaxed moment. One of the important things about portrait photography, like I said, it's ESP is the key, and whoever made this photograph has got themselves in a situation where Carolyn trusts them, and we've got a really natural, relaxed, comfortable look on her face, and that has worked really well. That's a key that you've achieved. I also really enjoyed that you've got a point of view down at her eye line. You're not looking down, you've got down to the same eye line, so consequently you've got a clear view across at Caroline. For me, you could take it a step higher by just a little bit of preparation. Those curtains could easily come across. You could have pulled that curtain to the left and covered over that open window, which is, a distraction on the left-hand side, really easily. I don't know whether the curtains pull all the way back, but the ideal situation would be to pull them all the way back into the far corner, so the whole background is the curtain. And the other issue is the colour inconsistency that's going on here. You look on her face and you'll see the nice warm light from a tungsten light, it appears, so it's definitely warmer and a more yellowy colour, warmer colour on her face than the cool sunlit illuminated curtains in the background. With this, you could take the whole thing slightly warmer, and then there would be degrees of warmness that would work together. But in this presentation, you've got a warmth look on her face and on the front part of the chair, and a cool look in the background, which for me don't balance particularly well. So some really good pluses here, just let down by a couple of technical issues. Score of 3. So this is the first of the acceptances. Lady of Fashion. Strong, broad lighting. So this is the opposite of what I was talking about. So the lighting is in front of the face, and so the part of the face towards her is well lit, and it's completely in shadow on the other side. And the flow of light goes quite strongly from left to right, and so the shadows all make sense, and that all flows across the picture and works really well. That highlights the model and her dog, who are both in a similar sort of place, really well, but there's a significant fall off so that the illumination is nowhere near as bright on the busy background, and so we are drawn and held at the model. She's also looking back at us in a really engaging sort of a stare, and the dog's also looking at us, so that worked kind of really well. Everything in the in the set sort of points in the same direction that works. I am left with a little bit of a puzzle. Like, she's a lady of fashion and somebody's dressed up to the nines and got all the makeup on and dolled up like that. I'm surprised that she's slouching on the chair that way and got a dog all over it, so she's going to have dog hair. So that kind of works, but the story didn't tie in together perfectly for me, but a really good picture and an acceptance. Lucy turning 10. Another acceptance, simple, balanced, natural light. I really enjoyed the colour and the background that reflects well with her. There's a bit of time been taken here to organise her hair. You know, we're not talking hair and makeup, but we are talking let's bundle up that hair and tuck it over your shoulder like that and get it ready. Get her standing in front of a clean, focused background, and it's a tight picture just about her face and her the look on her eyes. She feels a little pensive, and so this is back to what that Paul was saying about expressions sell photograph. You've got 90% of the way. We just need that awesome smile to come bursting through, which I'm sure she has under there somewhere. So somebody behind you to tell her a joke or something. There's some degree of engagement that has to happen to take her from that slightly pensive look that she has there to an explosive smile, which I'm sure she has. And all 10-year-olds have, so one step away from perfection. Heidi, another CPS person. The backlight on Heidi's hair is really great here. It just glows and works extremely well. And that backlighting creates the situation where the lighting on her face is even. It's a relatively harsh looking environment. Well, bright, it's better than harsh, but in bright lights under the trees, you could easily have a situation where there's speckled light on her face, and that would be really, really difficult. So you've made a good choice to bring that light in from the back and then expose, so we have this kind of light ethereal feeling, and the lighting on Heidi's face works really well. The black and white again works well here. It's simple and it kind of goes with that backlit, soft and sort of airy lit feeling. And the branch at that top left frames the whole thing well. Again, sees a situation where Heidi's interacting with somebody to camera left. 1 second later, say, "Look at me," and I think it just goes up a notch. But well done, there's another notch to be had here anyway. Charles. This is all about the warm and engaging expression that he has here. Again, we have a situation where he's lit with quite warm light, and that works in well with his red hair, and there's enough balance. If you look at his eyes, the eyes are white, and we also see the blue of his eyes to bounce back, so that's emphasised by that red lighting. And in the background, I'm not sure whether you've desaturated it or whatever, but there's less saturation in the back, so that works really well. You've also vignetted it significantly so that we do have the brightest part of the picture is compellingly on his face, and that has really pulled it out. And then on top of that, the expression tops it off. So well done, good picture. Best in show. What else can you say to that? I think we just stop here and be done with it. It was a bit tricky when this popped up. It's pretty obvious that I know when this was taken and who took this, so well done, Kelly, if you're watching this from somewhere else. What happened was Kelly and Brian were around at our place, and they just bought themselves this big fancy backstand thing, and Brian wanted to play with, so he ordered us around as Brian's wont to do, and Kelly was given the camera. I was ordered to sit on there, and Brian had this big huge octi-block thing. So technically it was put together really well. I've got a nice amount of soft light, which has done me some favours and hidden some of the worst parts of the wrinkles there, so that worked really well. And it's faded away on the either side. You can see that the light is slightly in front, and if you actually look in the top of my eyes, you can actually see the half round of that big light stand that he's got there. So this is all just lit with one single light, and the flow goes, it's powerful enough to go across onto the backlight, which is just right behind me. The issue is here that there wasn't a heck of a lot of time spent in the makeup and hair department. And that T-shirt's a bit dubious, to be fair. If this was going to be a portrait that we're going to hang on the wall, then perhaps we need to spend a bit more time tidying up this fairly scraggy-looking portrait subject. But it was a fun thing to do. For my daughter. Simple lighting that works really well. I wonder if it's window lighting. It's sort of coming strongly from the direction that looks like it might be window lighting. A touch of fill on the left-hand side I think might have been helpful here, particularly in her hair. There's a big kind of a dark area on camera left side of her face that I think just a reflector or something from the left-hand side could have bounced just a little bit of light back in there, and that might have helped. The black and white works really well, simplifies things. I don't know what colour her jersey is, but it doesn't matter in this situation. It's just a tonality that works. Her concentration tells the story. But again, back to my point about action, this is in part an action photograph, and I wonder if a picture of your daughter that were perhaps taken at the end of this little piece that she's successfully played, and then she looks back at you in satisfaction, maybe that's another view and another type of thing that is perhaps worth thinking about. So take it to the next level as well, and I think that it would be worth doing. This is a compelling picture, and it definitely tells us something about her as a person, so correspondingly that works. From a post-production point of view, there's a couple of bright spots in the background that a little bit of work in Photoshop would tidy up and improve things significantly. So, but good effort. Toffee. The black and white works really well here. I enjoy the sort of design / abstract of taking the photograph of the dog on the deck. We get those lines that all converge away into the back corner, and that's achieved in part because of this really good point of view that you've chosen here. So I was talking about getting on the same level of the dog, but you're not doing that. You've actually gone to the other extreme and gone right above Toffee, and you've got a huge head and a small dog and a bunch of graphic shapes in the background, which works really well. We all know that a Labrador, the hugest part of the Labrador is the head and the nose and that big licky tongue that just wants to say hello to you. So you've given us that picture of Toffee, and it's worked really well. It's all about the nose and the eyes. I said something about shadows, but I don't quite know what I was remembering. Maybe it's because of the dark dog's hair. It might be worth painting in or getting a little bit of light on the left-hand side of his face and on his chest where it is almost black. But that's a minor picky point. I enjoyed the picture. Indian Festival after dark. I suspect here again on camera flash, but that has actually worked well. It's weak enough not to be overpowering over the face there, and it's fallen off quite quickly, so that definitely our subject in the front who's looking at us and engaging with us is nicely lit. It's all in its face, so we don't have any shadows to contend with, and it drifts off in the background quite quickly, so we can see that the other person is there, and then behind that there is absolutely nothing. That really works well. The key to this, though, for me, is the relaxed, friendly expression on this young man's face, and that sells the picture no matter what the technical side of it does. But the technical's done really well, and the expression tops it off. Good picture. Black-tailed cockatoo. Difficult mottled lighting techniques there in here. You can see that there's little bits on the top of his head and on the chest of the bird and on some of the wings where there are areas of mottled light. You've positioned, or the bird's positioned, I'm not sure how it happened, but it's worked really well, so that there's a little patch of bright light just where his eye is. That sort of highlighted and emphasised the face, which is an important part of the picture. Nice simple background, which works, and it just needs, I would like to see a touch more personality, an expression in the bird's actions would kind of lift it to the next level. If it was picking something up or doing something or engaging a little bit more than kind of looking away, it might take it up another level. But definitely a well executed representation of this cockatoo. Another CPS person, Southern man this time. Take a look at the lighting balance here. Again, compared with looking at these pictures on my desktop, they're all definitely a bit lighter than I'm seeing them. So we've got light coming in from the right-hand side, and we've got it coming in from the left-hand side. It's stronger on the right. I'm not sure whether it's a window out that way and another window or a reflector or whatever it is, doesn't really matter. But that's actually worked well. We've got this lighting on both sides of Pete's face here, where for me it's less composed here than when I saw it, but his eyes were really hard to pick out. It was quite dark in the middle, and that the balance didn't flow all the way across, in part because he's sitting underneath that hat, which is a big part of the story, but the light hadn't got in there particularly well. And then if you look further down where his chin is, we can sort of see the light is strongly on one side and almost not on the other side as it's in the shadow of his top. So perhaps I'm basically looking for a reflector or something to reflect light back into Phil's face a little more evenly, I think would allow us to engage with his eyes more. And then again, that's particularly it's relating to my variation of looking at it, which is much darker than this. Diaphragm workout, another acceptance. Bright red background is really well handled. So you've got the two colour thing there. You've got a more natural fill light with this bright red background that hasn't blown anything out. It's just lit up his hair in the background and created this kind of vibrant, energetic, setting. Really, it's really just telling us where he's at, and then he's following through with that level of energy with his expression, where he's really blasting it out and singing for his life, I suspect here. The Phil holds it really well. The personality here is expressed in his actions. It's not just actions for action's sake. The actions express, for me, his personality really well. And yeah, so it's about the actions tell us something about him rather than being about the actions. That's, for me, is why it's a successful portrait and works well. So well done. And acceptance. Miss Polly Rose. The lighting's really good here, and it appears that there's a main light, a high light, sort of lighting down on top of her. So you're not getting any block or any reflection off the glasses. We're getting to see her face really well, and you can see her forehead is lit more strongly, that there's no strong shadows, and it drops off down towards her feet, and that works really well. The pose and the expression fits the story, and the set is simple, so that all comes together extremely well. For me, the light on her face could probably be lifted, and I would probably want to darken off the top part of her dress, which is the brightest part in the shot. I want my eyes to be drawn to her face rather than to her chest, I guess is what we're talking about. But, awesome setup. Like the picture, she seems to be the perfect model for this sort of situation, and she's done a great job of it, and you've technically put the thing together really well. Now we move on to the score 4, highly commended. This is called Mother of Three. I kind of found that interesting. I'm wondering if the lady defines herself as a mother of three. Perhaps she does, and maybe that's part of the composition is what's this mother of three side of things, where it's basically a big black square. A little bit hard to tell in this black background, but she's sitting in the bottom right hand corner of the frame, and absolutely everything else is black. So she's kind of slightly off kilter, and she's just got a strong, intense, maybe exhausted from being a mother of three look as she sits there and engages with us. I felt that the light, which is coming high on camera right, is a little harsh on her forehead, and I think you could do well to spend a bit of time post-processing to just calm that down a little bit. There's certainly detail in there, but it's just a bit bright, and it just pulls my eyes away from her eyes, which are really where the story is. So the expression and pose is fantastic. I like with the lighting. I think you could take it up half a notch with a few minor fine-tunes with post-processing, but I really enjoyed the picture. So that was just highly commended. There's no face in this picture, but there's still a compelling story and a sense of personality that comes through strongly. I was going to say this is a great picture of a little girl, but then I figured I'd probably have to apologise to all those gender-sensitive people who are saying there's nothing in there that says it's a girl, it could well be a boy. But this young person who wears a tutu is lying on the bed there and telling us a story about them. They've just been doing their dance thing, and now they're just flopping there watching an iPad, which again tells us something about a young person of this sort of situation. The black and white simplifies the whole things, and I really love those big, heavy shoes at the bottom part of the picture. They're not quite your typical dainty dancing shoes. They're big, solid black shoes that she still jumps around in and has a lot of fun in, and they tend, for me, to anchor the picture really well at the bottom, and everything kind of then flows away from there. We've got a vertical frame with a big strong circle in the middle, which draws my eye and then explains the story, and then I explore from here. So very little about the girl in terms of literal expression, but definitely a story about her personality, and so for me a successful portrait. The stare. Minute depth of field here. If you look closely, his eyes are really sharp. His hair on the side of his face and his beard is sharp. His nose is soft. The top of his hat goes soft quite quickly. His ears are definitely soft. So there's just this minute little depth of field which is controlled superbly. We then have this kind of strong diagonal form, goes from top left across his face down to the bottom right, so that holds it really well, and a really simple and complementary background. And the colour's punchy but not garish, so I really enjoyed this and gave this a highly commended as well. What's this? Full of vitality, absolutely is. Red and green are a punchy combo, so you've actually got in here just forms of red and forms of green, and that's the only two colours that are evident in the whole place. They sit together really well, complement each other really well, and the green is what makes the red punch. So the vitality is in the story, and her hair tells the story, but what is it that tells the story about vitality the most is that huge grin and that expression. It's back to Dick Poole, as that expression sells everything in this case, and the story of vitality and enthusiasm comes through loud and clear. Well done. The window to your soul. This is technically wonderful. You got really close to this thing. There's, once again, a really wafer-thin depth of field. This lizard's eye is pin sharp, his teeth directly underneath it, dead sharp. and the background is just simple and black, basically, because there's no light on it at all. And we have this kind of anthropomorphic thing that we make this to be a person. We perceive that as a smile, but I do wonder whether he's just ready to reach out and bite you or not. It's kind of hard to tell. You don't really know. Is it actually a window to his soul, or is it a lizard sucker play so that he can take a bite of nose? Don't know, but it's a really well done picture. This is Lou. The lighting is soft and high to camera left. I enjoy the vertical form where she's sitting right in the middle of the frame. There's an element of solid strength in that, but there's an elegance in the pose that definitely comes across. I find there's some other interesting stuff happening in the background. There's a shadow on the bottom left-hand side that I'm not quite sure what it is. It almost looks like it comes off the chair, but on the other hand, it doesn't fit with that strong lighting from the top there. So maybe there's something else outside there, but throws that in. What that does is it takes away the perfect symmetry and creates a little oddity, which to me added to something there. Once again, the pose and the expression are what it's all about, and they reflect elegance, and that works really well. I just wonder if you could brighten the light on her face just a little bit to draw me to the face, which is where a lot of things are happening there compared to the other parts of the picture. Exceptionally well done, though, and another highly commended. That was an honours, actually, wasn't it? The last couple of honours. Sorry. And this is Millie, and score 6 and best in show. This is an exceptionally well constructed portrait. And the lighting, if you look in her eyes, once again, you can see the lighting. It's shot from relatively low, below her eye line anyway. And there's a big, huge, soft light block there straight in front. If you look even a little closer in the eyes, you can actually see 2 or 3 people. It looks like somebody holding the light, bending down, standing beside you. The fall off of that light is well controlled as well. There's nothing on the background, so the background must be far enough away so that it's just gone completely dark. We can see a little hint that we can see her hair, and we can see these feathers things in the cloak or the jersey or whatever garment it is she's wearing, which adds a degree of interest. That really works well. The composition works superbly as well. It's not in the centre, it's offset just a little bit to the right of frame, so slightly out of balance, and then she's tilted her head back the other way, so which creates this dynamic feel, and then again, that balances against the negative space. That punchy expression with the tilt of the head, and this is clearly a model who has worked really well, and the expression once again is telling us the picture. I enjoyed this a lot and worthy of best in show. It's the last one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. That was excellent. It's not often a judge has to critique a photo themselves, and I know that's difficult for you as well. Thank you very much. Awards. First off is Lady of Fashion, Paul Williams.
Well done, Paul.
Next is Lucy turning 10, Bonnie Streetkamp. Heidi by John McCall.
Well done, John.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks very much.
Charles by Newell Greenfell. The CPS President by Brian Haybittle. You can keep that. Oh, is that right? For my daughter by Hisham Kim. Toffee by Pip Wright. Indian Festival After Dark by Jambo. Red-tailed Black Cockatoo by Carolyn Alcock. Southern Man by Joe Curtis. Diaphragm Workout by Jonathan Brown. Miss Polly Rose Rockabilly by Tash Harris. Now we're into the high acceptances. Mother of Three by Karen McConchie. No Shoes on My Bed by Nola Sumner. The Stair by Alistair Phillips. Full of Vitality by Alicia Hebden. And honours, we've got Window to Your Soul by JK. Lou by Kelly Haybittle. And we've got Honours and Best in Show Millie by Sue Coombs. There's a ribbon to go with it too. Just while we're here, Sue, we might.
that's better. Yeah. Did anyone hear JK or? Okay. I'm just going to go to JK again because people online couldn't hear him either. There you go.
Oh, yeah, I said I took this picture because I like the eye. The eye is very pretty, and yeah, I took a few of this lizard, and I picked this one because the mouth was open, and I used a macro lens. I was quite close to it. It's not. It's quite tame. It's not biting. It doesn't tend to bite unless you provoke it. Yeah, and I have a macro set up for this. With a front lighting, and the light just wrap around the head. Yeah, and throw the background black.
Thank you. I've just seen JK set up, so I'm sure at some point JK can bring it in, and we can see how he has his set up. It's fun, and it's a very doable setup how JK's done it, and I'm quite impressed. Thank you. Okay, I definitely think the batteries are going. So, reasonably quickly, we have got coming soon on the 26th of April, PI number 4 tonight is due in. And we also have the non-competition images to put in for the image critique next week to be in by the 2nd of May, please. And we have the PI number 5, which is photojournalism, due on the 17th of May. And on the 24th, and so I'm quick on this so that people online can hear, is next week we have the, I wrote it down and I lost it. We have the 7 p.m. is the image critique. And so, a very big thank you for the tutorial tonight, which from Phil, thank you. And we have Andrew and Gordon up the back, thank you very much. And we have Alistair on projection. We have John, thank you very much for supper. Thank you, Ian, and thank you,